So Carlos Locklyn's gone. How much of a problem is that? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show. We are absolutely, positively jam-packed. I think Oregon basketball might have their perfect center in the portal. I hope they get him. We'll talk about that later on the show. But we start with Carlos Locklyn, who is off to Ohio State. Lots of people have many thoughts. Some people are burned. Some people wish him the best. Some people think Ohio State is just this gigantic upgrade from Oregon. All sorts of thoughts flying around in the comment section yesterday. So is this a problem for Oregon? Yes, it is. But there is a silver lining to that problem. It's not as bad as it could be, and we'll talk about potential solutions. So the reason it's not as bad as it could be is because what Carlos Locklyn is leaving behind is a running back room that has talent, depth, and experience. When you look at the top four guys in Oregon's running back room, which is probably about the maximum number of players you'll see in that position group over the course of a season, you've got Jordan James, who everyone expects to be a high-level all-conference caliber back. You've got Noah Whittington, who I don't think is out of the realm of possibility of being ahead of him on the depth chart going into this year. I think it could go either way. I think it could be a split carry situation. But those two guys are veteran experienced backs who Locklyn has coached for the last couple of seasons. And so the biggest reason that I'm bummed Carlos Locklyn has left is the production that his unit put on the field was second to none, really. I mean, sure, Bo Nix played at a really high level, but that's just one guy. So if you're talking about position groups across the board, Oregon running backs, I don't think they were always perfect in pass protection, especially Bucky Irving, but other than that, man, they were really good. And Oregon didn't fumble the ball, and they ran effectively, and they had a variety of different backs, and their production and consistency and improvement was just so measured. I think that Locklyn's on the field coaching and the way that his guys perform on Saturdays in the fall, that's what Oregon fans are going to miss the most here. And sure, there are lots of good other running back coaches out there, but having Jordan James and Noah Whittington there, that gives me at least some level of comfort of like, okay, I don't know how much better Locklyn was going to make Whittington or James, right? Certainly guys can always improve, but how much more room for improvement was there? Was there a lot of coaching, a ton of coaching that Locklyn had to give those two guys that they hadn't already gotten? No, I don't think so. And also the more that I've thought about it, the more that I really don't think that anyone will go with Locklyn when the spring transfer portal opens. I'd be fairly shocked given that their backfield, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, is probably the best in all of college football with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, the Ole Miss transfer. Like that 1-2 tandem, best in the country, bar none. And I really like Oregon's backfield. It is not Judkins and Henderson there. So I think that that's the good news. That's the silver linings. You've got veteran, proven, productive guys who are going to be heading your backfield. And then you've got a guy in Jaden Lamar or a guy in Jay Harris who are not as proven, who have not had the opportunity to be productive at the Division I level. Lamar was a true freshman last year. Harris was, of course, at Division II Northwest Missouri State. Both guys have got some talent. I think Lamar can be just a really solid element in that room. I wonder if he doesn't have a pass catching role, kind of like a Sean Dollars in 2022. But we'll just have to see how that all plays out, and maybe we'll hear over the course of spring football. But that's kind of the upward thinking, positive thinking, uplifting is, okay, it's not as if Oregon's running back room is about to be a disaster for 2024. You do have to look at what's going to happen beyond that, because Oregon's going to hire a running backs coach. I don't know if it'll be this week. I'd expect they want to get that done as quickly as possible, because I don't know who's going to be working with the running backs now that Carlos Locklyn isn't there, and he's officially going to don the scarlet and gray this fall. So I think that for Oregon, that's certainly a big need. It's a distraction that I don't care for the team to have. I think the timing of it, as spring practice gets back underway and you look ahead to the spring game on April 27th, that part of it stinks. But That's the one upside is you got guys who, okay, I know what I'm getting from them. I wasn't looking for some massive leap, right? Jordan James showed that he can carry a pretty big workload. I think you just give him more touches, he'll continue to be effective. But question that I've gotten from a number of people out there is, well, what's the short list? Who are the targets? Who are they looking at? I don't know. That's my honest answer. And nobody seems to know. And nobody... Let me just rephrase. I was going to talk myself into a nice little tongue twister there. It does not appear that anybody knows, and I think Lanning will know, or will have everybody know when he wants us to know, because that has been the trend with Dan Lanning, whether it's hires or injuries or player. Like he's not a super chatty guy. He's not someone who, gives information just to give information, right? He understands it's part of his job and that he's, got to appear to the media and everything. But, he's more the Chip Kelly mold. Like, if this isn't going to help the program, then I don't know why I'm going to say it to you. Like, I know you guys got jobs, but that's why I'm here, but I'm not going to give you everything. And he tends to be pretty tight-lipped. So I think it's one of those things where, if I hear a name, I'll let you know, but I haven't heard, I haven't read, I haven't seen, or, I don't think it's really worth speculating like, oh, well, what about this guy over here? He could be good. Like, yeah, lots of people could be good, but if it's not in the realm of possibility for happening, then I'm not really sure what the purpose of it is. So that's where I stand on that particular matter. But, is Locklyn leaving a problem? Yes, it is. Is Oregon doomed to have a terrible running back room? I also think the answer to that question is no, because historically, this has been a very strong position for Oregon. And it's not as if Oregon's not an attractive school. I don't think Locklyn was, at least this is not the impression that I've gotten and that many others have gotten as well. I don't think he was going to leave for just any job. Like, this is Ohio State. This is one of the biggest programs in America, right? It's not as if, Ohio State's running backs coach who went from Ohio State to Michigan, right? It's not as if Locklyn went up to Washington or went across town and went to Oregon State. No, he went to Ohio State. And you can argue from now until the end of time. Some of you have made up your mind in the comment section. That's fine. Whether or not Oregon to Ohio State's more of a lateral move. Look, those are the two Big Ten title contending favorites, according to our friends at FanDuel right now. So as it pertains to 2024, yeah, you've got a more talented room over there, but are you going to get a ton of credit for developing and coaching and recruiting them? No, I don't see how you can when they've, already been developed other places for the most part. And obviously Locklyn had nothing to do with getting them there, but are they going to be well coached and produced this year? Yeah, I think we should absolutely expect for that to be the case. So I think it's kind of a power move by Ohio State, frankly, to say, hey, we're still Ohio State. We haven't beaten Michigan in 3 years, but we're still the Ohio State Buckeyes. We can go pull a Big Ten head coach to be our offensive coordinator. You're a newcomer. You're one of the favorites. We'll take your running backs coach as well. I don't think that's the primary objective making this move. I think Ohio State had an opening. They vetted several candidates, and Locklyn stood out. Why? For a lot of the reasons that, Oregon fans, many of you out there, are not happy with this move, whether you're wishing Locklyn well or not. And that's that Locklyn has been a really good running backs coach for the Ducks. So I think that, Oregon is capable of finding another guy who's got a successful track record, who's going to be able to recruit. And I think the biggest thing you miss with Locklyn, who certainly has recruited well, especially when you factor in the transfer portal, his biggest thing has been coaching, development, and production. Those three things have just been really, really good. And Oregon's certainly going to miss that. But you've got Jordan James, Noah Whittington. I think they'll be fine for now. I think whoever this hire ends up being, that's something that, affects Oregon long-term at the position. Can they go after this guy? Are they going to get that recruit? What sort of transfers could they bring in? So, Lanning has spoken in the past about the Rolodex of coaches that he's got, about, guys he's crossed paths with or worked with in the past, going back to, the various staffs that he's been on previously. So I'd expect the hire to be someone who is pretty well regarded, because the Oregon running backs position, the running backs coach position, I'd imagine there are more than a few coaches that would love to have that role. And so we'll just have to wait and see who it is. But as always, drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Do you know what potpourri is? I'll tell you. First, I'm going to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs, though, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. And hiring's easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. You know the only terms and conditions of a second segment tip? I'm going to have one on every show to keep me going, especially after I was playing a little pickup basketball earlier. Got to stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. My friend's mom always used to say that to him while he was playing basketball often growing up. Okay, let's get in the mailbag here. YouTube comments or X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. DMs and mentions wide open. If you want priority access, go join the flock over at Subtext, link in the description below. Wherever you listen to or watch this show, you get all sorts of perks. This from Tony. Going into a new season. By the way, what's up, Tony? Appreciate you. Longtime listener and supporter of the show. Tony's the man if you've met him before. Going into a new season, new conference, and expectations for the Ducks in 2024. It was said last year after the Ducks lost that thriller to Washington that Oregon was the team nobody wanted to play. For me, making it to the Big Ten Conference Championship game, slotted 2 or 3 in the 12-team playoffs. What do you think, Spencer? Always curious your thoughts. P.S. I will be going to that Michigan game in November. First of all, fantastic stuff there from Tony. Getting himself to Ann Arbor for that Michigan game, that is not a short trek from whether you're in Eugene or Portland or anywhere. That is really, really excellent. So I love that energy. Secondly, I think like last year, a baseline minimum to determine success is reaching the conference championship game. Now, that is, I think, slightly different from a season ago, because if Oregon were to say go 10-2 in the regular season, but not play in the conference title games, let's say Michigan's better than people think, just as a hypothetical. I think they're a pullback team, but let's just say they go 11-1, they beat Oregon, and Oregon is 10-2, and Oregon doesn't go to the Big Ten title game. But 10-2 is going to get Oregon into the playoff, right? You'd have wins at Wisconsin. You'd have a win over Washington, who will be probably a 6-8 win team this year. You'd have a win over Oregon State, who would your losses be to? Oh yeah, Ohio State and Michigan. Like if you were to just lose to Ohio State and Michigan, you'd have a win against Oregon State, who will probably be a pretty solid team this year. Like with their schedule, they'll probably win, I'd say, at least 8 games, could be in the 9-10 range, which could be at least a solid, respectable win for the Ducks. But if you go 10-2 in the Big Ten, that's going to get the job done. I think with Oregon's preseason expectations, that'll get you into the playoff. But that's the range. I think the baseline for last year was got to reach the conference title game, which essentially meant you got to win double-digit games. Same thing this year, but if they don't get in, but if they get into the playoff, yeah, that's a good year. But that's kind of where I'm looking at is Oregon's got to win 10 games at least to make the playoff, and that's what a successful season looks like. In the 12-team era, that is what the standard should be for Oregon football, for Dan Lanning or whoever the coach could be one day, but certainly for Lanning right now, with the way that he has recruited and brought in talent and the coaching staffs that he's been able to put together over the last couple of years. You have got to be able to get into that playoff to have a successful season, because anything else feels like you're leaving something on the table. And I think Oregon's schedule works out pretty favorably this year to go at Michigan, but host Ohio State. Playing both those teams, really tough. But this year, you'd want to go at Michigan because they're not as good as Ohio State, and you'd want to host Ohio State. That's a major, major scheduling break to have that split between the two. So that's where my head is at. 10 wins, get in the playoff. That should absolutely be the case. And if Oregon goes 9-3, misses the playoff, yeah, that's a disappointing year. That is absolutely disappointing year. Their win total on FanDuel is 10.5. I don't think they need to go over that to have a successful year. Certainly they're capable, but I don't think that that's, a necessary requirement to either compete for a national championship with this schedule or, make me feel like, okay, yeah, this is a good year, right? Oh, it's it's got to be 11 wins. No, doesn't have to be another 11-1 season. That'd be great. That'd be not going to complain with that. 11-1 auto bid to the playoff. Whether or not you win the Big Ten championship game, Oregon at 11-2, no way that team gets left out of the playoff. So, good question though. That's where my head's at. All right, a few questions came in here via the flock over at Subtext. Let's start with these from Bud. We'll go rapid fire because he sent in 4, and I'm here for that energy forever and always. Always. I don't know why I cut off the S on that word. I'm weird. Anyway, which Duck football players do you think might play both sides of the ball this season? Do not expect any to do so. What type of playing surfaces will our football team be facing as we move to the Big 18, as he calls it? So I think there's mostly natural grass on these fields. I don't know all the field types, but I did want to touch on this a little more because Oregon plays against Wisconsin in Madison in November. I think we could see Oregon play a snow game in the Big Ten with a greater frequency than we saw in the Pac-12, RIP. So I think that's the only field condition that I'd be wary of going into the Big Ten. But that kind of leads me into the next question Bud sent in, which was, what are the bowl alliances for the Big Ten? And I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this is a good question to ask. But like I said, with the standard for success for Oregon in 2024 should not even be on the minds of Oregon fans. What bowl game could you get if you get this or that? They're all the same as they were, and I think the former Pac-12 schools might get favorable treatment for an invite to certain games or whatnot in their new leagues and such. But Oregon should only be thinking about the Big Ten, about the playoff as they go into the Big Ten. But I think that for the Ducks, that's just what the new standard is, and especially once this playoff expands to 14 teams, which apparently it's going to do one day, which drives me nuts. But whatever. I definitely think that that's the only thing Oregon should be thinking about. Any other bowl game, not happening. Not now that Lanning is multiple years in. Once you are at this point, you got to be able to say, okay, this is what success looks like, and this is where our hopes should be year in and year out with the way that Oregon recruits. Last one from Bud, and this is a curious one as they go into the Big Ten. I also realized just now, I didn't answer your question. Potpourri is like a little bit of everything. See why? Okay. So, last one from Bud. I don't ever recall Oregon having a late November bye as we do before our final regular season game against the Huskies. Do we have any idea if that will be a regular thing going forward? I don't think it's a regular thing in the Big Ten, but I wouldn't expect everything to always run or feel the same because this is a new era for the Big Ten, right? It's new for Oregon, it's new for fans, it's new for the program, new for coaches and whatnot, but it's new for the conference too. So to my knowledge, the last time that I checked, and I check, just about every week, the Big Ten still hasn't released their tiebreakers for the Big Ten championship game. And so the Big Ten championship is no longer determined by the winner of the East and West divisions. It's just like the Pac-12 was and what everybody else is and always should have been, which is you get the top 2 teams from the conference in the regular season standings, but then, as we know, you're going to have tiebreakers, right? That's why Oregon missed the Pac-12 title game in 2022 because they beat Utah, but then the next highest seeded common opponent in the Pac-12 was, I think, Oregon State. And then that, went to, Utah beat them. Oregon did not. Oregon missed the Pac-12 title game. So I think that as Oregon fans go into the Big Ten Conference, they should be aware, you should be aware, of, hey, this is not going to look the same. This might not feel the same. And I think that for Oregon, it's not going to have a huge impact. I agree. I don't remember a year in which there was that late of a bye in the season before the regular season finale, but I don't think that it makes, a massive impact necessarily here or there. Sure, it depends on, what team you're playing and everything like that, but I think overall, that's not a common thing. That's just the way it's worked out for Oregon in the Big Ten this year. And, a bye before the Huskies game, not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Still more to get to on today's show. After we talk about eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins, like we hope Oregon picks up in 2024 against teams like Ohio State or Michigan or Wisconsin, hopefully all of them, and Washington as well. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, last football question, then a basketball name to keep your eye on to wrap up today's show. Serious question. This came from the subtext community. I call it the flock, and I appreciate everybody over there greatly. Serious question. I'd love to hear your thoughts about why the Big 12 isn't more interested in Oregon State and Washington State, given their success in basketball, as well as being a good match academically and culturally. So this is a twofold answer. Number one, Washington State has got better football viewership than you would think and should be a more attractive TV product, but they are not. And part of the reason is the team you'd pair with them is Oregon State. Now, I need another sip of water. Okay, had to do a little editing there. Got a real catch in the throat. Not really sure where that came from. I'm probably not in good enough cardio shape from playing basketball earlier. Anyway, so Oregon State is not super appealing because they're in Corvallis and they're a relatively small brand. And then Washington State is up in Pullman, and they're a little bit of a smaller brand. Now, those are both land-grant schools or agricultural-based schools, going back to the history of their universities. So yeah, in many ways they do fit in the Big 12 because the Big 12 has a lot of those sorts of schools. I think Iowa State is one, Kansas State is one. I think there might be a couple in Texas as well that fall into that category. But the biggest reason is that there is a limit to expansion for now. And Oregon State and Washington State don't make the cutoff because they don't present a major market and they don't present brands that supersede their market. So Boise State, for instance, in the Mountain West has got an agreement in their television deal to get a greater share of the money that comes in because they bring in an outsized share of the TV revenue, right? So it keeps Boise State happy. They once upon a time were going to go to the Big East, but instead they decided to not do that because I think the Big East was starting to kind of fold when it came to football. And so they came back to the Mountain West but said, if you want to keep us around, you got to give us a deal here. Boise is not a big market. There are not a lot of people there. There are not a lot of television homes there. But their brand is such that they draw one of the largest audiences, I think the largest audience in the Mountain West. Oregon State and Washington State are passionate fan bases, but they are still smaller schools. They are smaller brands. They are smaller television draws than some of the other schools. Now, Washington State actually outranks the Arizona schools pretty considerably in the television numbers over the last several years. Oregon State does not fare quite as well as the Cougs, but I agree they could be a fit in the Big 12. But the other thing, too, is the Big 12 added 4 schools, and there isn't such a burning desire to add Oregon State and Washington State for the reasons that I mentioned, that they'd be willing to further dilute their payout. Because adding the 4 schools, it only diluted it kind of slightly. But if they keep adding more and more, the appeal just isn't there. I think one day Oregon State and Washington State could find their way into the Big 12 or, frankly, the ACC if those leagues are able to stay around in the long run. But is that a guarantee? No, it absolutely is not. And also, you talked about their basketball success. Doesn't matter. Nothing about basketball matters. If it did, the Big 12 would have added Gonzaga already. And they have not. And it does not appear they're going to. I think the Zags are, going to stick around in the West Coast Conference. So, which is where Oregon State and Washington State are now playing basketball and a lot of their other Olympic sports. So, for the next couple of years, that's why. And by the way, I've said this before. I'll say it again. It's wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong that you have got power conferences and those universities are not a part of it. This is completely and utterly ridiculous. Vanderbilt gets to compete in a power conference. Iowa State gets to compete. Like, what does Iowa State have that Washington State and Oregon State don't? The answer is nothing. The answer is they got lucky with their geography and how everything worked out, but I think it's completely and totally wrong. I'm grateful that Oregon is in the Big Ten. I don't love that they had to go there, but it's pretty clear that that's where they needed to be. And that's, where you want to be. If you want to be a heavy hitter in college sports, you got to be in the Big Ten or the SEC. And Oregon had that opportunity. They took it, and they'll be better because of it. But, I would have preferred USC and UCLA mostly USC, started this whole craziness in the first place. I think the negative effects have been numerous across the board, and I don't care for it. But Oregon is in a good spot, and being in the Big Ten, there's no chance that Oregon, ever gets left behind in realignment, and that's kind of the good news there. So, went a little longer on that, but that's okay. Let's talk about who I think should be the number one transfer portal target for the Oregon Ducks, and that is Vlad Goldin. I think it's Vladislav is his full name, but Vlad Goldin last year at FAU under Dusty May, who's a really good head coach, helped get his team to the NCAA tournament. 7'1", averaged about 15 to 16 points, 7 boards, and 1.5 blocks per game. This is a perfect fit with Dana Altman. This is a perfect fit. Is he as physically imposing as N'Faly Dante? No one has the athleticism and strength of an N'Faly Dante. But the reason that I think this I think this is such a perfect fit is Oregon is looking for a veteran big who has got proven production and can kind of be one of your go-to guys, or at least is capable of being that from time to time, who's got size. And Oregon needs size right now. You lose Dante, that's losing a lot of size down low. And look, if Nate Biddle is healthy for an entire year, then guess what? Nate Biddle is really, really good. But you still want to have more than one option available. And coming off of, the weight loss and the sickness and the injury for Nate Biddle, I don't know how healthy he's going to be next season. I hope he's at full strength, because if you think back to, not this season, but the prior year, when I think it was especially in the NIT, Biddle had like 3 straight games of 15 to 20 points and 8 to 12 rebounds and a couple blocks, and he can shoot it as well. So you bring in guys that are that caliber of player. I think you take the load off a guy like Biddle, who's unfortunately had his injury problems. And I just think that Dana Altman's track record with bigs has to be appealing at some level to Vlad Goldin, because you look at what he has done with Dante, Kenny Wooten, Jordan Bell, Chris Boucher. It has been a solid, steady, consistent level of just production from the front court guys. And when I saw that pop up on my timeline, I had to make sure it wasn't an April Fool's joke. And then once I realized it wasn't, that's when I looked at, what Oregon needs and why he's such a great fit. So I think that's got to be priority number one in the transfer portal, because Dante, Dana Altman loves his big guys at the defensive end of the floor and at the offensive end. But this is a guy who averaged 1.5 blocks a game last year on an NCAA tournament team. I think, though, I forgot to check whether he was with FAU the year prior, but when they made their run to the Final Four, I think that this would be such a great match. And I'm still waiting on the transfer portal to make some news for Oregon basketball. It hasn't happened yet. It needs to happen. I suspect it's going to happen. I just don't know when. But if Vlad Goldin were one of the guys, I would be really, really up for that. And I think it'd be a good match on both sides. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.